The Leo King, and we are here live for After Dark, the spiritual talk show, which is brought to you by highvibe.tv. Of course, make sure that you download the apps and check out our website, highvibe.tv, for awesome content like this that's free. And we also have new apps that have just come out with notifications. So if you are on the new app, of course, we just sent out a notification saying we are going live. It's pretty cool. I'm going to be doing horoscopes. We're going to have Jax pull random cards. I'll even see tonight while we have the spirit advisor here, if he wants to start throwing notification at you guys about some different gates and stuff like that, and gene key gates.
Sounds like a good idea.
Cool, I do, yeah. So make sure that you subscribe, though, to get all the awesome content like Deep Astrology that was tonight. You might have missed it live, unless you're a subscriber to highvibe.tv. And, of course, not only do you miss it live, but you don't get the whole show with the actual visualization of the charts. You get the full audio with the charts, and you only get half the show with the video. So make sure that you subscribe and you get all the daily video horoscopes. Now, with all that said, tonight we've got the spirit advisor in the house, and we got Jax Atlantis.
Yo, yo, yo.
It's the three amigos tonight.
That's right. Three musketeers.
The divine masculine holy trinity.
It is. It's a lot of masculine vibes, but I don't know. Where do you guys want to go tonight? I mean, as an astrologer, I'm pretty excited that the fact that we're at a new moon and Jupiter's leaving Sag and changing signs. I always think Jupiter changing signs is a big deal. I don't know where you guys are at, though. Where are you guys wanting to go?
Well, you know, in the past few months for me, there's been something that I've been going through that a few other people I've been talking to have been going through, and I've been just feeling it a lot, which is Libra season. It felt like we had this very tremendous spike of energy, and then it was almost as if, like in Scorpio season, we started to take a little step back and start to observe what we did in Libra season. And it's as if now we're moving into Sagittarius season. It's almost like we're taking a deeper step down, but not because it's less. It's because we're getting ready and gearing up for basically, you know, changing our trajectory and aiming for something much, much higher.
That is definitely something I agree with and have seen as well and felt. And I think that the essence that I'm feeling for this moment is really about, yeah, we've been through some really high level spiritual connection points, and kind of for a lot of people inviting in a new connection to their higher self, new guides, or meeting your guides for the first time, just having that, yeah, that high frequency experience. And now we're being asked to not necessarily ground it down into the earth, so to speak, but more like make it human, you know, walk it, talk it, be it, breathe it. And that's Jupiter, breath. So getting ready to breathe life into this new consciousness we've been weaving into our lives over the past 3 months, or, you know, intensely the last 3 months.
Yeah, I feel like that's how portals work anyways, is they are an in and exhale energy of the universe. And it's funny because between both of you, I don't know if Ann can switch cameras back to both of you, and between of you is the picture I painted of a portal in and out, and I added a light to it.
I love that pic.
With a light, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's got some depth.
But to me, when you were saying that, I just thought of that now. I just channeled that, like, you're right. This breathing in and out of the universe does it too. There's this true moment of this shift here that we're taking all in, and Jupiter is the biggest planet. There's something to say about this big momentum energy that's about to be exhaled, while at the same time there's an inhale. It's kind of weird. It's and that's kind of, I think, how fish work. I think fish with gills, there is this uniqueness about it where it's kind of a dualistic nature happening at the same time.
Yeah, and I think also with the changeover from Sag into Cap with a lot of planets, and Jupiter right now is like, we've kind of got 1 foot in the past, and we're also got 1 foot in the future. And especially specifically on this new moon day, I feel like everyone's kind of seeing that. They're kind of seeing, okay, what am I going to trim? You know, what am I going to, you know, take the husk from the grain, what I'm going to carry forward. And where we meet that new consciousness is in the breath. I don't think it's so much about concepts, ideas, even like belief systems. It's really just about the physicality of, just as you can picture the lungs spreading that oxygen through your body into the blood, it's like we're physiologically integrating this new self. It is a new self. And this week in human design transits, everyone has been a manifesting generator all week. They've had a direct connection between the sacral and the throat. And this is a really interesting connection and channel in the chart, because it's the same force that allowed us to stand up on our high, from like the quadruped kind of, crawling around. That kundalini energy that makes us rise up into a higher consciousness has been in play all week. And because it has a new moon, kind of really opening that localized doorway to this influx of new consciousness, this new evolutionary drive. You are downloading a new consciousness right now. We all are.
No wonder I like this week so much, all this MG energy around.
Yeah, because you got the 2034, so you've been, like, as you said, a content animal. You've just been, like, doubling down on the I can do it all, as the manifesting generator would say. I can do it all myself.
I can, but it's also something that it's not like I'm trying to prove anything either, too.
No, it's not a proving energy.
Some people have been telling me that, like, I feel like you try too hard. I'm like, it's not, I don't know what else to do, like, if that makes sense.
I mean, the MG is all about doing it, quote unquote, my way. And it's not because of how others are going to view it. It's actually quite divorced from any outside perspective. In a sense, it's an energy that doesn't even know, it doesn't know itself is doing it. It's just doing it. It's just, the energy is just moving. And that's where MGs can be so powerful and so creative and so making quantum leaps all the time. But that's also where they can have huge burnout. They can put huge strain on their physical body, because it's almost like the energy itself is greater than the physical body. So there has to be a really strong channel for that. And if we do have conditioning themes, if we do have outside pressure, if we do have like a mentality that is insatiable, then we feel that. Yeah. We feel that physically.
Yeah, and I would say the quantum leap's coming in unexpected ways, because like one of the biggest things is like people are kind of feeling and realizing right now that if they change their life, like if they change their real world life, it brings them into spirituality, and they don't need to change their spirituality to fix their life. Like they just need to start working on their life, and it's like the two of them work together naturally that way. Like they flow together. If you're stepping into the simple things, just the simple feelings and the kind of feelings that you digest and the kind of feelings that you start to consume on a more constant basis. Like, what are you feeding yourself right now?
Yeah, I feel like also with Jupiter going to Cap, it's like the veils are actually getting thicker. We've had a long stretch of really, easy access to the ethers, and that's been great, and that's been useful, and that's been illuminating. But now as we move more into this Capricorn energy, it's like those same kind of energies and those same kind of lessons that might have been very up in the astral are going to be coming and facing you through very 3D ways, through the people in your life, through the conditions and the synchronicity. Who do you connect with in public? Who do you keep seeing? What reflections are coming to you to show you how to navigate this more worldly way of ascension?
I like that. And I like that you thought of the thickening, because whether you're into astrology or not, this much Capricorn has never been seen for 800 years. And you can't deny that it's thick, heavy, earthy energy. And there is this little hot air balloon moment here, right? Like, Sag, the new moon, Jupiter, and then out of nowhere, the hot air balloon kind of runs out of fire. MG energy. Like, I'm wondering what the gates or what changes coming into this next couple of weeks, because it would actually probably be more of like a, what do you think it would be like? Even if it wasn't exact.
Well, we're going to go from this very self energy of the 3420. It's just all about consciousness coming into form and energy coming into form. And it's going to go into gate 9, which is the gate of focus. So it's like what have we seen this week in this really nice afterglow of Jupiter leaving Sag? You know, what has stood out as that golden mean, that golden nugget, that thing that's really going to carry you through, that is at your value level, that is truly right for you. We're going to get the next week all about, okay, let's focus and nourish this new pattern. And let's leave out anything that doesn't fit in this pattern without, you know, a care, without, oh, I don't want to leave that behind. I don't want to reject them. I don't want to, you know, it's not about thoughts right now. It's not about thinking. It's about, where is the satisfaction found? Where do you get that buzz from what you're doing with your energy?
And it feels too simple. Like, it feels like, for, you know, there's a lot of people that are
disarmingly
like, no,
simple.
that's, you're just being too dreamy about it. You're just being too, like, flowy with everything. It's like, no, really, like, just listen to what your heart is saying right now. Just listen to it, because it will tell you. Like, you know, I've gone through that a lot recently. There's been so many situations and people that we don't have to categorize things into that evil framework anymore. You know, it's just like, it just doesn't work. It's not good, so it's not enough, and so, you know, move in a different direction.
That's okay. We can't do it all. You know, we can't feed everyone that wants to be fed by us. And we got to have trust and faith in the universe as the caretaker of everyone. That's not our job. Our job is to individuate. Our job is to become who we came here to be and to live our story. You know, so I think also this glow moment is kind of like we're walking into a more mythological view of our own lives. But to be that hero of your own myth, you have to really be present to what your journey even is. What is the mission? And the mission doesn't necessarily have to be epic and light and dark clashing, and it can just be, I'm living for myself, finally.
Yeah, and I think it's okay to experience things in life opposed to not right now, where it's like, hey, I went through that, really was what I learned a lot, whatever, and not have a chip on your shoulder from anything right now. Like, it's like, oh, that was an experience, or that was an experience. Because to me, I love that vision you just gave of the, you know, it reminds me of the hermit going out of the woods in many ways instead of into the woods. I feel like we've actually been more gaining a lot of this knowledge. But there's kind of a dualistic nature of this. Like, we are kind of being a hermit going into the woods while also leaving the woods. It's like a different set of woods. And it's a beautiful new set. And it's way different than a hermit's ever done. So that's why it leads with that light at the front. You know, it's like, I don't know, but I'm willing to go. Like, there's something to say, like, if we stay in the same place, that would be horrible.
Yeah.
And the irony of the hermit too, you know, it's like, you know, going into the forest, like, with the objective of finding that wisdom and finding that knowledge, and then sort of leaving and being like, you know, I don't have to have an objective, and finding out that that's like even more, like, not everything has to have an objective. Not every experience you have. Like, I had this like magical experience like a couple weeks back where I was just literally, I sat down on a beach and I decided to just make something in the sand for like an hour and a half, for like knowing that it's just going to be one person walking by that, like, you know, destroys the art or whatever. You know, it's not gonna look good after that. There's no objective to it. There's no saving it or keeping it. And one of my friends was like, oh, do you want to take a picture of that? I'm like, no, like, there's no objective to this. Like, create something right now, find the wisdom in something, find the beauty in something, but don't look for a way to make it like work right now.
It's all in the experience. And I think it kind of makes me feel like, we were in the forest and maybe now we're coming out into these highlands, and you can see farther afield. You can see more of what's coming, but it's not like you see it all. There is still a journey with its, you know, attendant challenges and twists and turns. It's just not as dark and thick. It's more of like, okay, we know that we're headed off to this faraway city and we've got to get there, but we can't see the clear path yet.
Yeah, it's like when you look down a street and you see that haze of the heat along the sidewalk or along the, you know, or you look really far in the distance and you can kind of see that the road curves, but you have no idea what's around the corner, but you know it's calling. There's a pull to go there. There's a focus, like you were saying earlier, this new focus. It's like there's a focus on go this way. And I like how the term that Jax uses of no objective, of a lot of the experiences. But I think that this is a point to where it's like, I think people are having tons of experiences. I think it's about looking at the ones that you're also not doing too. Like there's ones that are available. It's like, why aren't you doing that, you know? Or why are you afraid to speak your truth about it, to even see if it's going to be a door to try? I feel like there's something to say about that. I think that this is a rare moment to where it's like, you don't want to look back in your life and go, gosh, I should have just said that to open it up, or I should have just mentioned that opinion, or I just should have, hey, are we on the same page? Like, there's a lot of relationship stuff with Venus in the South Node this week. There's a lot of just relationship stuff, period, throughout this last, decade since Saturn opposed Uranus in 2010 that we're completing in many ways, in a weird way, because that was Libra Saturn, and now we're at the square points of finishing this Saturn in Capricorn stuff, coming into all this Capricorn. And I showed this week on Deep Astrology tonight that the nodes are in your chart. When you take the midpoint of your nodes, it's the destiny point in your chart. So 45 degrees up from each nodal point. And so right now we have the North and the South node at 9 going to 8 of Cancer and Capricorn. So that destiny point is 9 and 8 of Libra and Aries, and Juno is right there all week in Libra at 8 and 9 degrees, squaring the nodes. And so right when Venus is on the South node, right when Mars trines the North node, right when everything's hitting the North node, the Sun quincunxes it, and then Neptune comes direct, which is, I think, the haze you're intuitively picking up on, this clarity moment coming. There was a lot that happened at the end of this last half of the year since Neptune went retrograde in the spring.
So much.
It's like, whoa.
That feels like it was decades ago. I feel like we've been on a twisty, turny path that, when I look back at who I even was in the spring, who is that person? Yeah, I know. They were so young. We've been through so much. Yeah. And I think as we look into more of a focus of our own, mastering our own patterns, it's really there is no room for external debate. There is no room for even a lot of influence or input. It's we're on the road. We're on the road now. And yet we're carrying our own illumination. So even if there are these moments where we're coming up against this choice point of expressing our truth or coming clean or confessing things that we just need to get out of our own system so that we can walk freely without the burden of the past on our shoulders anymore, you have the light. You're carrying the light. No harm can come to you, even if it's the scariest thing to come out with something. You're going to be fine. You're going to either get the reward of that time of courage that you dare to enter into, or it's not a match and you keep on moving and you keep on walking down your specific, unique path.
And it's about being more comfortable. Right now, I would love for you guys to talk for the next 2 minutes because I'm hungry and I've been in MG mode, and I'm going to eat this pecan brownie. And I think it's speaking up. People tend to right now be oh, I'm in this situation and I probably shouldn't do this, but I would be more comfortable if I were, right? It's a simple thing like this. I'm hungry. I'm going to eat now. You know what I mean? Juno and Libra might feel oh, I've got to keep all the needs of everyone else around me in the forefront and kind of just push mine down, or just, be the space holder. But with the opposition in Aries, it's no, your growth edge comes by launching yourself more into holding space for your own journey, holding your space for your true needs, holding space for breaking with the status quo, maybe breaking an old pattern of acceptability of what is normal, of what is appropriate, and just being real with it, being Aries with it, just being
I gotta pee, even though it's the middle of a show, and I'm gonna get up and do that, you know, instead of like, oh, I have to hold it because I don't want to break fly, you know. So it's a simple formula, and it shouldn't be a big mystery anymore. And I think the main thing is, do you know your worth? Are you being honest about your worth?
Yeah, and recognizing as well that, like, you know, when the journey means the most to you, that's when the journey means the most. It's not when other people say that you've gotten to this point where now it can mean something because everyone else agrees that it can mean something.
Mm-hmm.
It's like your actions, no matter how small or simple right now, like, no matter how they look to other people, like, engage with your actions as they want to happen, like as you want them to happen. Like, move in your particular strange individual series of movements, because if you think that you have to follow someone else's guidebook, like, you'll be disappointed at the end. Mm-hmm. Someone else's guidebook is for someone else. You know, it will lead you into this like half robotic, like very cold version of their path, and it won't be authentic, and it won't be full of passion, and it will leave you, even if you get the laurels at the end, you know, even if you basically, you know, receive your prize, it won't feel like what you think it will when you get it.
I'm getting a Mario Kart visual, and I feel like something to really pay attention to is that, yeah, even if you veer off the road and like fall like off the level,
right,
you know, Source is still going to pick you up and place you at least close to where the rest of the pack is. So it's not like we're just careening off the path forever and we just land in the ditch and that's it, and we're just stuck. I think, yeah, we all can get stuck in a pattern at any time, but I think that it's important to not be so hard on ourselves all the time about the pressure of getting something right, because there's massive support. If you're showing up for yourself, even to make the mistakes you need to make, you're gonna be blessed. You're gonna receive the next, you know, lily pad to jump onto, even if that's from a very like embarrassing or vulnerable place. And I think sometimes that's the most heart-opening thing we can do, is make a fool of ourselves, because it actually wakes us up, and life can then pick us up and dust us off and, you know, get us back on our path. Because if we're not taking the risks, then life is not interested in us. It's like, oh, you're not in the arena, you're not playing the game, so how can I give you the blessings and the bonus prizes if you won't even dare to fuck up?
Yeah, and especially if it's Rainbow Road, because there are times where you won't even need to be picked up by spirit, because falling off the edge actually leads you to like the end of that lap or whatever, and it's actually way better. Your mistake ended up being like far superior than your success would have been. It would have taken way more time for you to be successful.
You might actually win by flying off the level.
Whenever you play that game and you do get brought back in the game, if you push the gas too hard, once it sits you down, you'll spin out. Mm-hmm. So I think there's that part of like not freaking yourself out and being like, oh my god, oh, and then I'm up and I got to catch up because I'm worried about what everybody's going to think about my place like right now. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the Uranus transit that's happened to every new moon for the last 4 months exact, about worrying about what other people are doing. And I think that's been something I've been hammering hard, and especially in Taurus, it's this property value people are placing on people, and we're talking about a collective. We're talking about a collective, and I think that this is going to be the hardest part for the collective, is letting go of. I used a really dark analogy today. I used that, you know, when it comes to cattle, you know, branding cattle with like a tag, or even how they tag whales or tag all this. Like, it's like, oh yeah, this is your number, and it's like you can have an X or something, and it'll be like, oh my gosh, that person's with that's my ex, that's my old property. It's like, you know, when you had like the house as a child and now somebody else has it and you go back, it's like, yeah, that's my house. It's like, it ain't your house anymore. Yeah. You know? Yeah,
and you're limiting your identity by still being possessive over what was yours. You're still maintaining a old version of yourself. And like the Hermit energy feels really strong right now, and I just feel like the Hermit's great because he or she is like really good at being the witness. So being able to see what's happening and not implode or be sucked into the energies of what's happening around them.
Yeah. Yeah, and it feels like right now, especially, it's like we don't like not engaging with other people's stuff that feels unnecessary is like something that almost everyone's recognizing right now. It feels like even to like the meme level, like we're creating so many things about just like avoiding all that. And at the same time, it's like it can be so tempting to get sucked back into old stuff because then you know kind of how the game works and you know like sort of where it ends. But the thing is, like, yeah, you know, when it comes to possession of people, when it comes to letting those things go and not worrying about it, it's important because it also might accidentally reveal that you had a really dangerous mindset in the first place. Like, if you think of your ex as your property still, then that means you might have never loved them in the first place. Like, there's a very good chance that you were always objectifying them in that way. You know, like thinking of them as something that you could have, and you can't have other people. Like, that's the whole trust of love. Like, the trust of love is that you don't possess anyone else and they don't possess you. Or you try and possess them and then, you know, unsurprisingly, they try and squirm away and escape because human beings, like, we have to be free in that way.
Yeah, and then it's the other part of the coin where it's like other people are like looking at, well, that was that person's property before. So, right? You know what I mean? So then it's like,
we're comparing ourselves with them.
Right. And then it's like, oh, or will that cause friction?
Or I can't
anything,
have that.
like anything. Like, it's just like, it really is a collective upgrade. And this isn't about like everybody going to a Burning Man camp and have an orgy kind of energy. I think that that's where people are getting really lost in this whole idea of like the collective coming together, and that everybody's going to still have their own unique ways of love or whatever it is, connection. But the idea of a collective is that the collective is an individual bunch of groups of people and unique groups, and they all come together, and they all don't, you know, have some sort of ownership over another group of people, or one person having ownership over a whole group of people, or any of this kind of stuff. Because that's what I think, when we think about Uranus, it is an intricate ability for all these random, unique spiritual frequencies to come together. And they don't come together in a predictable form. And that's the whole thing, is that everybody's trying to look at things like, well, society has always been like, you should do it this way. And this goes into religious aspects, to societal aspects of whatever century you're in. I mean, they all kind of tie in a unique way that way. So it's kind of like, well, that would be wrong if I ended up with my ex-husband's friend's whatever cousin or something, you know what I mean? Like, or as a business partner, seeing how people were thinking that was love, you know? It's like an instant, like, ooh, you could see where these are collective things that Taurus is saying. These old understandings of ownership and value and all that stuff, they're shifting. That's what Jupiter's going to come in and trine right away when it comes in. That's what Venus is trining this week. Is like, Venus trine Uranus is a freedom element of taking the chains off of Venus. Like, hey, like, go where you want to go, Venus. Like, love how you want to love who you want to love, and know that you're part of the collective. You're supported by the collective. But I think there's a fear with Chiron there, squaring Venus, of this old ego's weird. I think it's weird to me. I don't know what you guys think about Aries Taurus, but they're very similar, right? Like, there's something about them being very similar about ownership. One's identity, one's more of like physical ownership kind of energy or value through it. But they both have this very similar quality. And so even though Uranus is in Taurus now, and even though Chiron is in Aries, they're playing out this ego ownership aspect to things really intensely, or how things should look a certain way. And that the universe has those two are the weirdos. Like, they are the weirdest of the two planets. When Chiron's not even a planet, but we give it enough because it's that powerful. It's in the alignment of the planets. It's in between Saturn and Uranus. So it's in that in-between space of, again, this comes back to your veil that you're seeing right now. Because Chiron is in between the physical reality that we can see with our eye and what we can only see with the telescope. That's where Chiron sits. And
so the veil is becoming a bridge.
Yeah, and Chiron is a bridger. a bridger of, and the only way to bridge is to accept with Chiron vulnerabilities and transmute them into. This week I've been just saying I don't like the term healing anymore. I'm so over that term.
Yeah, because of what it insinuates. It's such a passive thing. Like, it's almost like you're sitting there waiting for the healing to finish, and then you can go do something once you're healed. And it's almost like there's so much more action in healing. Like, real healing, when you're repairing something or improving yourself, requires like rigorous steps. Like, you have to move in a certain way. And so healing, like, yeah, the way it's being used in the collective, a lot of times it's like almost like healing is something you have to sit there and wait and then like let it happen to you, and then like you move on at some point. But usually healing is something that you kind of genuinely have to give yourself. Like, you don't heal from toxic relationships by like waiting X amount of time. You heal from toxic relationships when you start making the repairs that are getting you into the toxic relationships.
So it's like we're changing the model of healing, and it's not so much about abstinence anymore, which, if anybody has had like any kind of reoccurring patterns or addictions, knows pure abstinence is a very hard road to travel to heal. But if you can bring more into your life that actually warms you up and wakes you up and makes you feel alive and gives you that buzz of joy, that's as healing as anything. And I think that's really where we're moving into, because Jupiter right now just moved into the 10th gate in human design. This is the love of the self. What makes me me? What makes my behavior? What about my behavior defines me? And it's really about holding space for you to just completely open up into your own nature. And when you open up into your own nature, you, in that Aquarian way, give everyone around you in a ripple effect permission to do the same. And that's how such a complex grouping that Uranus brings and Aquarius brings and the age of Aquarius brings is possible, when everyone has that dynamic spark within them, because they're leaving space for that, opening space for that. We can all coexist. We all can have our intricacies, our uniqueness, and our differences, and still be of one united movement in some sense on a collective level. So I think that's a really important distinction to make. Like, yeah, healing isn't going to be this diversion that leaves you on the sideline until you're strong enough or ready enough. You have to keep showing up to strengthen yourself. You have to keep getting up to find your strength. It's not something that's passive anymore. And I think joy is the quickest route to that place. And joy is a very personal phenomenon.
Yeah, I love that, because when you bring more of that good energy in, it's almost like there's the natural instinct of your soul, your human mind, your body, your heart that goes, well, I don't want to take any of that in anymore, because that's going to affect this good place. Like, that's naturally feeling good. That you naturally, when you're in that good space, go, yeah, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, that's way over there now, because I'm way over here now, because this is what feels amazing.
Like a good example is, you know, I was in the drug scene a long time, in the rave scene, and, you know, I had friends, you know, that would not have no problem walking over to the Del Taco, to the guy smoking methamphetamine just like in a random parking lot, you know what I mean? But like, it'd be weird. It'd be like, if it was like an event, like let's say a wedding or something, they wouldn't go do that, because they were in a natural space of feeling good around people and stuff. It was when the wedding was over the next day or the next day after that, when they're in their own space and they're not around good energy and they're not in it, and then it's like, Del Taco's looking pretty good. Not the tacos, but where's that guy from the bathroom area?
Yeah, I don't remember.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you don't, like, if you're in a good space. Like, I just had a really great audition for a TV show yesterday, and on a major network, and I was in a great space. If somebody were asking me right now, like, hey, do you want to come to my house and like throw all that away by doing some crazy fucking thing? The last thing in the world I would do is go towards that place just naturally, just because there is some understanding spiritually of what's there. And I'm going to bring up something with the healing thing too. So when we look at Jesus, you know, he gets a lot of his power from being this great healer. And then if we even look at today, we look at a president like as if who can heal the country by fixing it. Healing and fixing are very similar. I mean, I really don't know what the difference. I mean, they're adjective in a way. It's like, come on, they're the same shit. But I think that, you know, we seem to be looking outside for energy that's going to fix us now, whether it's people or leaders or all this stuff. And Capricorn's like, sure, it's about leadership in Capricorn, but it's the integrity of the actions you take within yourself, and it's the road, that map that you create yourself. And that's why it rules business, is because not jobs either. You know, like people think, oh, well, like I got a job because I got a 10th house coming. It's like it does much better for like self creation of your own path than it does like you're going to get a job. Like 6th house is more like job, like, oh, you got a position that's going to work in the hamster wheel that's part of the gears of the clock.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
but the clock is the 10th house of Capricorn, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, like, there's so many jobs right now that aren't going to be jobs in 10 or 20 years. You know, there's so many jobs that aren't going to exist. And it's like, it's not like some sort of like warning that like all jobs will be gone or something by 2040. But I believe it was like 2036, like essentially everything's going to be from home as far as the jobs that do exist. And, you know, as far as like anything else, I mean, it's like entrepreneurship, entertainment, or education. You know, like find your thing that you're passionate about, and even if it's stupid, like it's baseball cards or something, like you can make a channel educating people about like how you collect them and like how they can collect them, and you know, these different things, where like take on sort of more of an entertainment role, and like you sort of talk to people about the different things that are going on. But it's like we kind of have to like make something for ourselves or get really educated on something so we can educate people about it, or be entertaining, you know, and not everyone can step into that space, but we kind of have to find our thing, like our genuine thing.
And as we kind of look at the transition from Year of the Pig to Year of the Rat, it's like, what is Jupiter in Sag and Year of the Pig left you with? Hopefully it's left you with your niche. Hopefully it's left you with those resonant souls who value your perspective, your knowledge, your point of view, or just your energy, to the extent that you are valued in your own right. Not because it fits into the previous models of the dying old Capricorn systems, but because we're finding a light in our community, in the tapestry that we've woven through this year. And then as we move into the Rat, it's like where we get really determined in this new context, in this new setup, and really get down to business, making this real.
Yeah, and it's not so much intellectual. They say intellectual in Rat, but then it's the far-seeing intellect of a rat that sees how the dominoes work and the pieces come together, that it aims towards that, and it just does it. It just doesn't get distracted off this or that, or, you know, maybe that way. It's just sure about it, and it sees it really quick, like, go. You know what I mean? Like, there is an instinct. Yeah, because rats are very instinctual. Like, if you notice, they know how to climb along these really weird areas to get into wherever they need to get. They know how to penetrate and get where they need to go.
They can swim really well.
Yeah.
They can eat anything.
And speaking
they're resourceful.
And speaking of rats and the friendship thing you were talking about, you know, being around the right people, being in the right vibe, and not returning to old things, because you're not alone, essentially. Like, when you're not alone, you don't return to a lot of those old things when you start to put yourself in the right position. And it's like with rats, I mean, we all know like nicotine and cocaine, like you have been, you know, tested on rats, and like the rats
I was just going to bring
water.
up about testing in rats.
It's, you know, the rats, we found out there was another study done, and if you give them social time with other rats, they'll choose that over cocaine, over nicotine, over anything, anytime, because like the rats understand like that there's more in love than there is being alone. And, you know, like if they're with other rats, they're not going to choose the cocaine. They have no reason to.
And why do you, it's like, I was just going to bring up this is so crazy that you brought that up. I'm like, why is it that out of all the animals, they test everything on rats?
Yeah.
But, you know, it's funny because, and it's not funny, but I'm just saying it's funny that they choose rats, but yet, like, there are actual apes that are the closest to human that you can, and that's, like, banned, right? And I'm not advocating for it at all. I just want to make that very clear. I'm just saying that it's kind of an ironic situation that it's like, no, they're too close to us, so don't do that. But there's plenty of rats out there anyway, so... fuck it. And I when I was a kid, you know, I grew up in Irvine, and they built this there was a railroad track that goes through Irvine, and it goes all the way up through from San Diego to LA, and then that goes up to the coast all the way up to San Francisco and stuff. And what was interesting is they built tunnels underneath them because people were starting to commit suicide, like at the railroad crossings. So when they dug into them by my housing complex in the community I lived in, all the rats started coming into the community. And I remember my dad would have to set traps. And as a kid, I just I did not like seeing the rats in the rat trap. There was something that was really, and you know, I'm a rat in Chinese, so I think maybe it hit me a little bit harder because it was like, why did you fall for that? Now, that's what I look at. But I think then I was like watching my own kind get slaughtered by a little $5 piece of wood with a spring-loaded, you know, piece of metal with a piece of peanut butter and cheese. That's the funny thing, though, about the intelligence of the rat, that it can't figure out the traps well. If it gets distracted into simple pleasuries that are off the trail.
You got to stay close to your instincts.
Yeah, you do.
And not just the most immediate fear-based, oh, I just need the next meal to survive. Even though it is an instinctual process, I think we're moving into, because I think in my view as well, Capricorn is a certain kind of like just psychic knowing, and it's not about concepts, it's just about like, boom, that's the one.
Right, yeah.
And right, there's going to be lots of false prizes, as there always are. And okay, so it's about navigation. And how do you navigate your life? Where does that place, where in you does that come from? Where you make that choice, okay, I'm going here, or I'm going here. I'm going with them, or I'm going with them. Like, where does that come from? And that's probably something that people need to ask themselves now is, am I in touch with my own internal navigation system? And it's physiological. It's not just from the brain. The brain and the mind are open to every idea that's ever been thunk in all of history. That is not
and
something to rely
has thought the thoughts that they say they haven't thought.
Yeah. So I think we got to tap in, as we said earlier, we're downloading this new consciousness, we're breathing it into our forms. There is a recognition of coming back to your chest cavity and your breath and your heartbeat. And when something is presented to you on your path, your body 100% of the time will always give you feedback about what is truly on your trajectory, in your destiny, and what is not. Even if that is just an absence of any kind of feedback. You know, if there's nothing being channeled through your body in response to something, it's probably not the right path for you.
Yeah,
there's always a pull.
Yeah, there's like so many times where someone's like, you know, I just got this text from like my ex, and like, I don't know, should I answer it? And I'm like, look at the face you're making. Like,
yeah.
Look at the face you're making. Like right now, you look like very like uneasy with the concept of it. So probably no, right? Like, I mean, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't look like it feels good. It looks like you already understand this is not a good idea, and you could think your way into it. You can think your way of like, well, they've probably changed because time has passed. But,
rationalize.
you don't know. Like, I think your face knew when it made that
right look. Did your face expand into a smile, or did it contract into a frown? Just that principle alone, expansion versus contraction. Where are you in relationship to that choice? Is it expansive or is it contraction?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it too, because it is the mystical sea goat. Right? That's where I think you're getting that whole intuitive hit knowing. Because if you think about a mountain, it is not a normal trail. It's not like the interstate gets thrown up the mountain, right? They always have to go weird around it. Like if you notice, you're like, wouldn't it be faster if I went this way? If you actually look at a map, especially here in California, like we go around major things and take way more miles to get around it because that would just not make sense to blow it all out that way, and it would be too weird, right? So there's one thing about Capricorn, you still can reach the top, but you have to learn and know that there are certain side steps that actually get you to the better steps in life. So people ask me all the time, like, well, how did you get where you're at in, like, let's say media? And I'm always like, well, I did that one media piece because I knew that that would leverage myself to get to where I wanted to go. I had to take a side step, even though it's still a step forward and it's a great step, in order to get to that next one beyond. It's not a straight shot up. It's like, you know, and sometimes it is. And then sometimes it's like, no, I actually have to, instead of being frustrated, because when you're climbing a rock, let's say if you were just rock climbing and you're like, okay, there's nowhere to climb here. I have to go to the side and then kind of come up. Instead of being frustrated about that, you have to look at it like, okay, that's just what I have to do to get up here. And that makes sense. And you have to take that into your life and go, hey, I'm going to have to do this. And if I'm going to be frustrated about it, then I'm not really probably ready to get up this tall in my goals. And that's what I see a lot of people at when they're telling me they've been trying so much to get to where they want to go in entrepreneurship or in media, especially because they live in LA. And I know a lot of people that are trying their butt off just to get a minute on television or on film. Mm-hmm. And it's like, no, maybe you don't have to take the role where you're the, you know, the naked stripper, you know what I mean, in the movie or whatever. Like, some people do that, and it's fine. I mean, Kim Kardashian, like, she threw out her sex tape with Ray J, right? So that worked for her. But I'm not, and you know what? No judgment either at the same time. Like, that was the path she wanted to do. I had no judgment. So, but that's the whole thing about the 10th house is it's zero emotional. It's the opposite of Cancer. It's like, it's very kind of, people think it's cutthroat, but it's not so much cutthroat as the fact that, wow, that didn't emotionally affect you? It's like, no, I had to take that sidestep to get here. I didn't allow myself to get whiny and complaining and emotionally obsessed about that sidestep to do what I had to do.
Because that's how you get stuck. You know, if you take that smaller role, even with the longer term vision of where it's going to get you, if you get trapped in the day-to-day, you know, drudgery of that necessary just bridge moment, you're going to stay there longer than you need to. And, you know, Kardashian wise, it's like they probably had a plan the whole time. They probably had like a media influencer plan to just hit all the marks and get as much attention on them as possible. And where has it gotten them? You know? Well, we all know that.
Yeah, me and Anne were actually talking about Kim Kardashian like the moment before David like got here today. It was really funny. We were talking about how now she's getting like a law degree and she's actually like helped like a lot of prisoners like, you know, fairly be released. And I'm like, whoa, okay, like I didn't see that coming. I misjudged Kim Kardashian. I sort of like, you know, been like, oh, she's just, you know, she just basically does that. You know, it's not just the sex tape or whatever, but it, you know, this is basically like what she's presenting is just this image. And I'm like, well, it appears I'm wrong. She like is working on bettering herself in all these different ways and she's doing all this like awesome stuff. And you know, it's like, it's more power to her. Like, she's improving herself. And like, it's important to remember, like, the lesson of the Fool is like, it doesn't just come before the magician, it comes after the world. So we might hit like victory in one particular place, but we can't rest on just that one type of thing working forever. Eventually, we'll have to keep an open mind and become the magician again and start a new journey.
Mm-hmm. I like that, because there is no, even though there is an ending and a beginning point, there is what we conceptualize as a shift. But really, I don't think that there is a break point in a wheel at all. You know what I mean? Like, the wheel is a wheel fully, right? A circle is a circle fully. Like, so there is no like gap spot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like when you, or like some sort of weld spot. You know what I mean? Like, spirit has created things in wholeness, not in fractured elements, right? And so
life is a spiral.
Yeah.
And so even if it looks like you're taking a step back, you're always moving forward. You're always moving up. It's just a matter of can you reinforce yourself by contextualizing where you are on that spiral. You know what you've been through. You know where you want to go to some extent, even if you're somebody who's still questioning their purpose. Your purpose is your success and your satisfaction in life. And yeah, we got to be able to put those parameters around where we are on that spiral, that is a necessary skill, I would say, in today's world, if you're not going to sink, you know, and just be lost in the in between, or just in the illusion that you're just repeating cycles, or that you're actually moving backwards. You have to know, okay, I'm doing this to go through this, not to just stop here and and fall in a ditch and just stick. So remember the spiral, you know, and it's a daily thing. Like, we can feel totally victorious one day, wake up the next morning, and it feels like we've taken 3 steps back. And that is partially just an illusion of mind and time and space. But know your spiral, know where you were yesterday, know where you're going tomorrow, so that you don't get stuck where you are right now.
Yeah, I love that you say that, because I feel like the ditch is an emotional overstep with taking too much time out for comfort. Like, it's okay. We need rest. We need comfort. We need these things. They're pit stops. I remember growing up as a kid, I had aunt and uncle here in Laguna Beach in Emerald Bay, and it's a private beach and it's a private area, and they had these steps that went up all the way from the beach that are really high. But they had pit stops, like little beautiful, like nice little benches along the way with like a little water and all that, and you could just like sit there and watch the ocean view forever. That's not where you're gonna sit forever, though. And I think that with the North Node of Cancer, sure, we have to aim here and we have to make emotions a major part, but we still have the Capricorn loop in, which is saying like, well, okay, take some of your time, but also like continue to show up. Like, you still have to, like, when you have to know where is that moment where it's like, I've reached enough of this, now I can keep moving forward. Instead of getting that cycle is where people can get really like lazy of like, well, I'm just going to continue to rest. I'm going to continue to wait until, you know, there's all that. And I'm like, oh man. And I don't know. I'm like one of those people, like, I'm unique. I'm Jupiter in Capricorn, so I get it really well.
We're grateful.
And, you know, I also think there's like an important thing with living the victory while it's there in a genuine way too. Like, being humble is good. It's good to be humble, but take credit for the victory that you had, so you don't, you know, miss out on the realization that you just had it. Like 6 of Wands in the tarot, it's like you really have to take part in that parade that's for you, because you were just victorious in something. Because if you don't, then when you step into 7 of Wands, which is like, what do I do next? Like, what comes after that great victory? What do I, you know, sign myself up for? If you don't give yourself that credit while it's happening, then you might end up just getting lost for no reason. Like, you clearly have the contents
or
of your
not have an advantage from it, because that 7 of Wands is an advantage. You're either on top of the hill with people coming after you, but you always, they always say in military, right? Like, you want to take the higher ground, right? Because you have an advantage. And that whole higher ground comes from, oh, you're the person who won that thing. Come on up here. There's always that come on up, whether it's a job, whether it's this, come on up. And you have a better view too about what's happening and what's coming up to you. I mean, the whole all-seeing eye thing, if we're going to get into that, and even in our bodies, the pineal gland or the third eye sits way up high on the top of who we are as a body, overlooking downward on everything in our soul.
Celebration also maintains your momentum.
Yeah.
And it releases you from the hardship of maybe what you had to go through to get there. So that celebration is just stoking that inner fire and attracting the higher vibrations so that you can step into them. And just with this concept that joy is healing, like, maybe you did go through a treacherous battle and you're wounded and you're exhausted, but if you can get to that high ground and you can celebrate it, it's almost like that's when you get filled back up by the gods. That's when you get your second wind.
It's proven through lobsters that, this is from Jordan Peterson, the psychologist, that, and it's in the science community, that lobsters actually respond to antidepressants, because in the lobster hierarchy system, the more that you are in the hierarchy of lobsters, the more that you rise up and are more well known. Believe it or not, I mean, I don't know what lobster life would be like. I don't think any of us do. But believe it or not, they have a hierarchy system. And there's lobsters that don't make it to the higher realm, and they get depressed and their dopamines are low. And there's something, and their serotonin level is low, actually. That's what it is, their serotonin. And what happens is when you revel in your accomplishment, at least, I like how Jax said, of course, remaining humble, but still accepting it in yourself even, like being part of that parade and so forth, it affects your bodies physically. I love that you used that God was filling you up, because that's the best way. But there's something to say neurologically, too, that the dopamine levels are higher in those that revel in success more, because they continue to not be afraid to accept the parade. Like, I mean, I'm in racing, so I have no problem with taking the trophy and sitting when I'm first place and taking the picture. But I don't sit up there and do the whole crazy stuff or anything like that, you know. And whenever they give me the mic, I think my family first. I think the people in my life. I think the event coordinator. You know what I mean? It's not like I'm like, I'm so fucking badass, like that, you know, I'm the leader, I won. You know, it's like, no, it's like a grateful moment. It's appreciation. It's a thanks to everybody that put it on and supported. And I always say, you know, anybody could have been up at this space, but just so happened to be me, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. Our neurology is a feedback loop. So even if you don't have the big victory in front of you that day, you know, use it as a strategy. Celebrate your small victories. You woke up, you took a breath, you're still breathing, you're still eating, you're in a first world country most likely. Like, still being able to put those coins in our own box, so to speak, to keep us going even when there isn't a complete first place trophy moment, is survival skills in the current age we're living in. You have to advocate for yourself every day to yourself, because your brain, your subconscious, is going to give you the feedback of what you put into it, the thoughts, the emotions, etc. So nourish yourself well, even if it's not an overt, you know, complete annihilation of obstacles, because we're all continuing, we're all going to keep going. Life never stops until it does. So yeah, we can't afford to be judging ourselves so harshly that we get stopped in our tracks. That's just not, that's not good for us. It's not good for you. It's not good for you.
Yeah.
It's not good for any of us.
No, but I think that if we kind of take a step back before Capricorn, because this week really is about Sag, it's like what gets you on those trail to stay on it is your beliefs, is your
faith,
gratitude. It's your faith ultimately, and it's the faith, and it's there's a little bit of Sag. Like I posted today, just Top Gun. Like I feel the need for speed, because Maverick and Goose are behind and they have to beat Iceman, right? And they just said, hey, did you hear Iceman just won that one? They go, that's okay. And they get all fun and laughy and excited, and they give themselves a high five, and they go, we're going to go do this thing. That's Sag. That's all it is. It's not actually getting in the plane and doing it as much as finding a humorous, positive outlook is going to be a lot better getting in that plane to go win Top Gun than not. I mean, if you're going to be like, oh, this person just won and you're in second place, and you're going to be like, well, we're fucked. I mean, that's really going to be harsh. Not that great, especially coming into Capricorn when you get in the jet. The Capricorn's like you're locked and loaded in a seatbelt and whatever it is. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you're in whether it's a roller coaster, whatever you want to call it, you're in it. And that's the one thing I like roller coasters, because you have to, like, with your friends when you're a kid, let's be honest, we were all nervous the first time we went on a crazy roller coaster.
I still
but
am.
when you were with your
me
friends
too.
and you gave each other high fives and you're like, I got this, it made it the whole time fun, because you were wanting to see everybody's reaction and everybody was looking after each other. And that's what got you through. And when you got off, it was like, that was so amazing. You know what I mean? Yeah. But if you went in there, like, you'd always see that person that's like by themselves, totally like, I don't know if I'm going to do this. And then you see them walk off, they don't get on, you know? Mm-hmm. That's what I think's happening at this point right now, too. There's a lot of people like, I'm unsure if I'm going to get on. And I think that we need to see, without overextending ourselves of trying to help people too much, but see those people and just offer like, are you okay? Hey, oh, you got this. You got this. Just that little bit. It doesn't, but it's a huge amount.
It's huge.
It's huge. A little bit right now is big.
Yeah, one of the most magical things in the whole world is when you see someone who's like less confident than you about something, and then you like, it almost makes you feel like you're more like in your power, because like you understand that, you know, you feel better about it, and so you sort of like coach them, or you sort of show them how it is that they can like do that, and you encourage them. And the funny thing is, by teaching someone else how they can be, just like with teaching anyone anything, it teaches you even more like how to step into that bravery. And it's like, it feels like we're going to be called for that in a lot of different situations. So it's like, whether you win or you lose, like in this upcoming season, like who do you want to lose next to if you lose, and who do you want to win next to as well? Who will be there like when you're winning and when you're losing? Who will be there in both situations?
I like that. And that's where this is about, opening up doors, because I really feel that we are very able to see what makes sense, but there also is something about Sag where it does feel like a fan of roads. Like there's a lot of roads. There's a lot of areas to aim. But it's about narrowing them down by experience, one. Two, by speaking up with Mercury and Scorpio is like, because when you were bringing up, one of you two were bringing up hieroglyphics earlier, or, I mean, today we're speaking in memes, and we're speaking in emojis, and we're speaking in GIFs. I love it. It's amazing. We're going back to the way that the Egyptians spoke. I don't think that the Egyptians were just sitting speaking as far as we do communication today. Like, it was a much different way to communicate. I think they were telepathically communicating. But there is something to say about how we're doing that now, but we still have to cross that bridge where we're not at that level yet. I mean, like, you know, like memes, GIFs, and, you know, are not really that advanced as far as communication, as far as when we're in a world where we're in the transformational experience of it, to where that's creating a lot of disharmony right now about trying to understand these doors. Like, where it's like you have to be blunt. Maybe you could use a GIF at the beginning, but you're still gonna have to put that words, or an old school phone call, or an old school communication in person. There's something to say about that. It doesn't matter even in these, like, because Jupiter and Sag is the gurus. It is like, you know, even the gurus, they don't just tell each other something from far away. They come into a meeting. They come into a tribal meeting, and they have a tribal meeting, and they clear air between each other. They learn from each other, but they also, you know, give each other respect to listen to one another right now. And I think that that's extremely important, instead of when you feel energy and you feel people, and if you're just going to close it off, but you know that there's something to learn there, there's something to do there. It's like, why are you afraid to step up into a more higher, you know, realm of self? I mean, and I think that just is about learning how to be much more of a better guide for yourself, and learning that we all can become wisdom seekers, teachers, and wisdom guides by learning to respect not only yourself by speaking your truth, but also by being willing to listen to somebody else's truth, and be in that state. But I think that there's some place too where a guru knows, a guru's not going to just walk on the street to somebody on the street and be like, hey, I'm going to be your teacher right now, and I'm going to take you and, you know, do this. Like, so if you're just trying to, you know, because, you know, we all get messages from people we don't know that are just like making up these insane stories. Like, you've never had a conversation before. If you've been conversing with somebody before and you've gotten to know them and you've gotten deeper with them, that's different than just out of the clear blue sky, like, hi, I'm your fucking da-da-da-da.
And there's a lot of it in the collective. It makes me so happy, because the collective in the past, like, it feels like maybe the past 8 months has gotten wise to it. Like, we're not falling for it. It feels like last year there was this whole like fad going on where all these like spiritual mentors were just messaging people out of the blue and just being like, hey, like, I was just called to be your mentor, and like, I need to teach you these things. You need to learn from me, because like, I can help, you know, align you and all these different things. Like, basically, like, it's just straight up like unabashed cults, you know. It's like just creating cults with people. And it feels like the collective is like, yeah, unsolicited stuff is weird. Like, it's not even unsolicited inappropriate stuff now. It's almost like unsolicited advice. Like, we're all recognizing that we can come to the person when we're ready. Like, you know, it's like when the student's ready, the teacher appears. Like, once the student's ready, then that's the time. Like, we don't need to take advice from people who are just throwing it.
Mall psychics that will come up to you and go, "Oh my gosh, you're gonna have the greatest love of your life," and and then they get you in a corner and then they tell you this stuff and they go, "But you're gonna need to give me 6 payments of $300 and I'm gonna have to remove an evil spirit from you," and I was like,
I'm sensing you have a mother and a father, and that you have grandparents, and that it's like yeah, no, for sure.
Well, I think in the old traditions, I mean, you don't approach people with a reading, right? You just don't go to somebody and say, like, "I'm here to give you a reading."
Because
anybody who's doing
been
that,
traded.
I'll look at camera. Like, anybody that's doing that, like, "Hey, I'm here to give you a reading." Like, no, that's not how it works. Like, you have to ask for it.
No one has your truth. There are definitely experts and guides that are adept at illuminating your truth with you, for you, but no one outside of you contains something that you need. It's just the truth. And I think, there is a rife...
I think gurus and teachers it's about, if we think about Sag, it's about just being like, "Hey, okay, you've been aiming here. Like, let me help you just like you yourself aim over here."
Yeah.
And maybe choose even another aim, but at least like...
And here's reflection to see what you are and what you're not, so that you're not confused as to who's even aiming that bow, because that's something we do need as humans. We need that reference. We need that reflection. That's how we learn. We are self-reflected consciousness, but that's amplified when you can get a clear reflection from another. And I think there's people that are trying to give advice that don't know themselves, and that's how they're trying to find themselves, is by pushing the one thing that makes sense to them onto someone else. And there's so much more work to be done behind that. And those people are going to be the ones that need the most help come next year, because they will have missed the real point, which is what we're talking about, self-leadership.
Yeah, and with South Node Jupiter, that starts Monday, because that's going to be a new one. That creates radical ideologies and beliefs, especially in Capricorn, that become really rigid, really like fatalistic, like
dogmatic.
Dogmatic to the extreme. With Saturn Pluto in the same sign too, it is going to be a lot of this, and I think that this is where people have to know, like, you came into this with being ready for it and not being willing to buy what is being screamed at you that doesn't resonate with your truth. Like, and I think that that's where this is going to get weird. And I'll bring up a sensitive debate, which is the impeachment right now, which, if you look from both sides, I mean, it's really about how the phone call between Trump and the president of Ukraine was. That's what the whole impeachment is about both sides' opinion of it. And it's about who agrees with which one. Like, that's really what it's about. And all the testimony is the opinions of everybody's view of the phone call.
Yeah.
So that's where South Node Jupiter gets really weird, is because it's like, okay, it's about everybody's opinion, it's about everybody's belief, it's about everybody's faith. That gets deeper, because I think we're going to see, especially with religions and how that's been in the background of what's been going on with the bombings lately and oil fields. And there's a lot of that stuff going on right now. Even just weeks ago, there was massive Israel and on the other side of the wall in Palestine, more fighting that went on. And then there was a ceasefire recently. And then in Turkey, and then I read an article today in Turkey, there was like 20,000 people or something affected by Turkey's new military move they just did in the last 24 hours. So there's a lot of things building up, and then there's a lot about the opinions of how it should look. I mean, you can go into English politics with the opinion of Brexit, and it became about the opinion on how Brexit should be done, right? So it's like, this is where it's going to get really intense. And I think that this is where people are going to have to get out of, because it's, again, a mind thing. And I love how, you know what, reflecting back, Dylan, on, we've been doing this a long time now, and when Neptune was getting retrograde, like, and here we are full circle on this whole retrograde. Mm-hmm. Like, we were talking about that then, on how all this is about the mind and being not the center of how we're making our
Truth,
choices
yeah.
and our truth and so forth. I mean, it's a good gauge for truth, but that's all it is, just a gauge. It's not like you don't rely your whole life on the gauge. You should rely on what the motor's doing. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
the gauges fuck up all the time. Trust me, I know. But there's something to say that opinions and all that with Sag rule a higher mind, not the more, you know, basic functions of your mind running, you know, the motors of your eyelids and, you know what I mean? Like, that's more Gemini stuff, and your lung function and all that stuff in your head. But the Sag rules more of this, I'm going to look outside the status quo of what my mind is thinking about to stay alive and to keep the environment around me understood, and look outside of that, but that's still mind. An opinion is still mind. And even though people want to say, no, my heart, no, that's my heart, like, and it's like, your heart is just your heart. Like, love is just love, and love is accepting of where everybody's at, and it doesn't really get involved unless the outcome is love. Like, I mean, like, you don't get in a relationship to go just sit and debate the whole time to try and win it, because then the other side, if you were going to try and get into a love relationship about being in a major debate at the beginning, and if, let's say, you won, well, he or she's going to hate you. If you lost, you're going to not be that happy with he or she. You know what I mean? Like, there's something to say about opinions and the higher mind being
the ego mind.
Yeah.
The ego mind is all about controlling our environment in the spirit of survival, and that's gone way too far. And we've, in the Piscean age, built up our infrastructures, our governments, our religions, all around having the right answer and the right umbrella to fall under. And if you just sign up here, everything will be fine. We'll take care of you. We'll take care of your salvation. We'll take care of your health care. That age is ending. All of those forces are quaking in their boots because the door is closing on their capacity to rule and control us. And the beings at the top of those institutions rely on the parasitic relationship they've formed with the collective. It's self-leadership time. It's the Aquarian age. It is time to come from both your heart and your higher mind, your pineal gland. If you're still getting triggered by stuff on the news, if you're still getting flustered by what someone said to you on Instagram or whatever, YouTube, online, on your phone, and the little tiny screen, then you probably need to decalcify your pineal gland a little bit, because you're not seeing the bigger picture, and that's necessary now, because otherwise you're a target. You will fall for it. And sometimes that's just about creating a better environment in our body for a higher mind to function, to tie it back to the physiology.
Yeah, and I might want to close with this. I love that you brought up the Piscean age and how really this turn of events that happens Monday, because really this week's really beautiful to me. I'm really excited for this week. You can just feel the excitement in the air. Yeah. But it's really about using it correctly, because I feel like if we think about this age understanding and how, I mean, from my research, and I did a lot of lectures on it, it's about 2000 to 2150, like that long, like 2000 to 2150 years, that every time, bam, new ideologies, new religious aspects, and then there's that rubbing of the 150 years, which is like people accepting it or trying to figure it out or integrating it, and like that's what we're in right now, is that 150 stage. Yeah. But I feel like this one comes at, like, if you look at the last 2,000 years, you know, Constantine in 325, like, you know, it's this kind of radical, like, vision of Christ, like that he has a dream, and that his mother, you know, was a pagan and was taking him to new moon ceremonies and doing all this, and he's like, I don't want to be part of that, and she was going to sex parties and all that stuff. That's the truth. That's the real story, actually. Because when I did all the research, I actually went to books outside of Barnes and Noble, and went into and found all that, and those were in all of his writings, and that was what was passed down. But it was like it was like my mom is this crazy pagan, and these people over here are rebelling against the empire that I am in charge of, and they're talking about this Christ. He has a dream about it. But there's subconsciously this dealing with very Piscean age coming in, right? Of like, I don't want to be in the pattern of what my mother is, but I'm also going to have a premonition through a dream, which also could be a subconscious trigger from just hanging around people talking about it, right? That creates a whole entire system that goes in. And,
yeah, it's the illusion of the illusion that you're gonna betray God because you're hanging out with God. You know, it's we don't have to worry so much about the rigidity of it. We can allow ourselves to flow open-mindedly through multiple different paradigms. For me personally, I'm not monotheistic and I'm not exactly polytheistic either. It's I sort of go between them, but I don't need to have a rigid definition. And I think a lot of people are finally starting to get comfortable with that. I think even secularists getting comfortable with spirituality, with certain ideas from spirituality, like lucid dreaming is a really powerful bridge kind of between that, because it's something you can kind of measure and weigh in a lot of different ways, but at the same time it's a very intangible, it's dreams, so how can you really measure that? But there's we're finding our ways to synthesize with the oncoming age of Aquarius. We're finding our ways to bring tech and spirituality together in our new technological selves, because it's the iPhone isn't just evolving, we're co-evolving with it, the same way man co-evolved with dog. I remember when I was 15 and I had my Motorola Razr with my, I would, for an emoticon, I would do a colon and then a parentheses, and now it's there's very specific emojis for different facial expressions, so they have exactly what you need, and it's it's evolving fast. It's all evolving fast.
And so is our connection point to our true source, our true self. So age of Pisces, one Christ, everybody follow and you'll be fine. Age of Aquarius, you heard it here first, we're all Christ. This is the time we're moving into. So the more that you can step up to that reality, the more we'll see the world we truly want.
Yeah, that's the second coming, which
it's
would be that Christ form would come through everyone. But I also feel, I love this subject. I got in a lot of trouble a couple weeks ago in this place. I always get in trouble in this space. But I love how Jax brought up monotheism, because that was what the Catholic Church switched to. That was the whole, forget Christ, forget astrology, forget Zeus for just a second. It came down to brass tacks of monotheism or not. Monotheism was one way to God only, and not multiple ways. It was either multiple or one way, right? Which I think is funny in society today too. There's a battle of that going on as well, in a lot of different areas, right? Should I just be single by myself and I'm going to cut myself off from everybody and that's all I am?
Yeah.
Or I'm too involved with too many people but that's how I have to live. There's this interesting battle, and monotheism was really a bedrock to the Catholic Church's big reign that came. Because when I was doing my research, when they came out with that, it was wow. But and I, as a musician, I'm somebody, I love stereo, right? I love to be able to mess with a left and a right, on somebody's ears when I'm moving something, right? And we have our whole life in stereo sound, right? Everywhere. I don't know anybody that listens in mono anymore. They don't even offer mono outputs anymore anywhere.
8D's
you know what I mean?
Getting pretty big. 8D music.
I was just thinking of that.
Yeah. Oh, and the microphones
stuff.
now. They have those microphones that'll record multiple different directions. So, I think with the shifting of the ages, maybe it does do a little of the mono opposite flops, and especially because when we leave the age of Aquarius, we'll go into Capricorn 2,000 years, and that's, I would say, very mono.
Yeah.
And so, but this is also a double Saturn ruled double age. But you have to use Jupiter as Pisces, even though it's Neptune, because they're co-ruling the signs. And then you have to use, in Aquarius, a Uranian perspective and a Saturn perspective. So the second part of Aquarius is the Uranian perspective. The first part of Aquarius is the Saturnian one. But it's not as bad as Saturn as, I guess you could call it the Capricorn one, they call it. It's more of Kronos finally he's always in battle with his father, Uranus, but Uranus is the ruler of Aquarius. So it was the father of the sun who is a father of time and the control of that reality in many ways, you know? Like that's a weird thing, you know?
And he's so old, who knows if we really have the correct story anymore. Like,
correct. I mean, and that's why I think we had debates, or we didn't have debates, we had talks about even the hexagram above Saturn shifting, this south node with Saturn, Pluto, Jupiter, like even the perspective of time, which I would love to kind of end it with this, is like, for all of us to talk about it, like, I really believe that all these planets in Capricorn with the south node is the full destruction of the idea of time. And I think there's a lot of people right now living right now in the spiritual community, or in the community that's really open right now. They're really seeing that time is not their main thing. But I run into a lot of souls right now who time is like really affecting them. Like, gosh, I have to be in bed at this exact moment, so I wake up at this exact time, or else something's off in myself. And again, human design says that there are some souls who need that. But
well, yeah, ultimately, we need what we need for the time that we need it. You know, we needed these institutions to perhaps prevent us all from killing each other back in the day when that was a lot more accessible. Right. And now, as we move forward, we will not need things like time as much, because the capacity of our consciousness to simply be pure consciousness will supersede the need for linear organizational bifurcation of each moment into little segments.
Well, so think about this. When I did all this, this lecture, which you can all watch, it's Age of Deception on YouTube. It's very popular. And it's boring at the beginning because I just give a lot of the facts, you know, like it's kind of hard to sit there for 8 hours and just like, you know what I mean? So, but what it was in Greece, there were no days of the week still like now. Like there wasn't 7 days of the week, you know?
That sounds awesome.
And what was crazy is you went to the middle of the town and there was a board, and you would go every couple of months or whatever just to find out where they were kind of figuring out to meet based upon
probably
random
sun, moon.
Random, like there was no month, there was no day. It was like, you know, it wasn't even Roman numerals, but it was like some like numerical kind of like, we're gonna meet on that day of that full moon of like that time, like that. It was just kind of like
when Jupiter and Venus come together, exactly. We'll all meet.
There was just
under
like,
the tallest
and then nobody else was following anything else. So imagine society today. And what's interesting is when you look at the Gregorian calendar we're on today, it wasn't even until the 1880s that the whole world started to finally get on board with it. Because you have to remember, if you look up time, like there are so many different time systems in the world, right? And so there was countries in the 1880s and even into the 1900s that still were not on Monday through Sunday, not on the 24-hour clock system. So that was the Industrial Revolution, though, that really brought that to form of, oh, you got to clock in at 9 a.m. and you got to clock out at 5 p.m. and then you got to, right? So that system was based upon, from all the research I did, from a globalistic understanding of commerce and creating of product and creating of warehouses and creating of labor and creating of work. So when people are like getting lost into that, I'm always like, that's the sheep. It's like idealization. Whereas like Abby and I talk about this a lot because of her being all about galactic code and the white wizard being the next 13-year cycle we started in July. That timelessness really is like happening
way.
Yeah. And I honestly, people go like, why are you up so late sometimes? I'm like, I just am. And they're like, and I'm like, I was in the military, trust me, I got up motherfucking at 0400 for a long time.
If you're a manifesting generator or a generator, you go to bed when you're out of energy. If you're getting in bed before you're done with your energy cycle, you're going to be like a battery that's corroding because you're just holding too much.
Yeah.
If you're a generator with sleep problems, go walk around the block. Go for a bike ride. Mm-hmm. Like, stop letting the Matrix tell you that you have to go to bed by a certain time because you'll wake up, you know, not refreshed tomorrow and you won't be good at your job. It's like, live. Get your energy out till you're satisfied. That's when it's time to stop. when you're satisfied.
Correct.
No rules. No more rules.
Yeah, and I think that's what it's about.
Unless it's your own
Which
rule.
card would you try to relate that to, Jax? To tell people, like, well, is it temperance maybe about time?
You know, when it comes to moving on from time, when it comes to letting go of time,
I don't know. Whatever you feel like you want to bring to the table here.
yeah, to me, I would say Eight of Coins is a really good energy for a positive way to get lost in time and like letting yourself like really get passionate and really connected to almost like your soul. I just feel really drawn to Eight of Coins for that for some reason. It's almost like the experience of bettering yourself, but not even in this sort of like, you know, prescriptive way, bettering yourself in this like really joyous way, rather than the Four of Coins, where a lot of people think that that's the goalpost. They think I should aim for Four of Coins and like be on schedule, be on time, like have this structure, have this stability. And it's like, you know, you can get to Four of Coins and it might make you happy for a while, but you know, eventually like you have to expand into something more. Yeah, exactly. Or you'll grow depressed and you'll wonder why you're depressed, because technically nothing's going wrong. Like Four of Coins in a relationship or Four of Coins in career, anything, you'll wonder like, why do I feel resentful even though things are technically working just as I planned?
Because he's holding that coin, like
exactly.
as if, like if you hold something for too long, you're like, okay, get it out of my, I'm ready to get it off of my arms, you know? It's like I've been holding, like if you're holding a bag at the airport, you're like, I'm gonna put this motherfucker down, you know what I mean? Like, But some people like, no, like that becomes constraint, you know? It's
and with Eight of Coins, it's like if you're doing what you want to do, then time just doesn't even matter. Like you get lost in the moonlight, you get lost in like that book, you get lost in whatever it is. Like, and when it's Four of Coins, like everything's on schedule and everything's organized and you have your structure and you just, it's crazy. It's
or
like,
you know what, maybe 10 of Coins is a beautiful one for timelessness, because it's just where you're enjoying the foundation that's there and all of the people that's around and the joy that there's stability within. Not so much, I guess it's always a castle picture with people in the castle, but the people that are all together in the castle in the moment of enjoying the people in it. Like when you achieve things and you buy things and you're like a house or like a studio like this or anything, you stop thinking about every little corner of the studio that you did when you bought it or when you got it. And what you do is you just start living in it.
Yeah, 10 of Coins actually might be perfect for exiting the old time paradigm, because 10 of Coins, you'd be saying, okay, what comes next in the next generation? Like this is like the next generation's time. Like this is like this perfect party where we've, you know, basically reached the place we want to go. And now there's a time when this party ends and we have to find out like what comes next in the story.
And that's a little bit of a slower card, but it doesn't mean it doesn't stop either. It puts the defense on, but it's like I'm willing to trudge through this to find something of more value. Yeah. And I think that's maybe where we're going with time. That I don't think time, you know, people are saying time never exists or whatever, but there's obviously, I always laugh because every part of the zodiac will never go away. It'll just transform. Like money will always be an exchange of something. Yeah. Time will always be something.
Capricorns were stacked in chickens and goats, like a long time ago.
Like identity will always be there, you know, like in some sort of way.
Or will we live happily ever after?
We will.
Well, I mean, sure, but I think that this experience as a human through the eyes of an astrologer in evolutionary astrology is that without all 12, and then you just might as well go back up to that other place where we don't really know what it's really like, where then all those forms are different, I guess, and maybe even quadrupled as much or more defined, like the gates in I Ching or in, you know, like, I don't know, but there is something to say that, like, with identity is as simple as just going, like, yeah, that's a microphone. I mean, you know, or, like, that's...
I'm separate from you.
I mean, you can look at it that way. But I think that the beautiful part, though, of Aries and identity is the identification that you have a soul. Right? Because it's like, in Pisces, it's... You're in the soul so much that you almost... are dying for Aries to come to where you can actually go and have confidence of what the soul's about, like, and to define it and to see it from your own understanding and perspective instead of being so inside of it sometimes. So you're right, there is a separation, but I also think that it's a necessary thing of consciousness, because that's the line between lines of unconsciousness and consciousness. Is being unconscious is what makes you conscious, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But I just think that these systems are all shifting based upon evolutionary astrology. It's Capricorn, it's Aquarius that's coming. Pisces has been shifting with Neptune. You know, and these are all the lower quadrants of astrology, so they're definitely dealing with, I don't want to say non-essential, because in the old medieval astrology, it's the understanding that, you know, from below Libra, you don't need any of those body parts. You don't need Scorpio genitals. You don't need Sag limbs or legs. You don't need the knees of Capricorn. You don't need the ankles and the weird things of Aquarius. You don't need the feet of Pisces, right? Like, you can chop that off the torso and still be in a wheelchair and survive.
Wow.
That's interesting.
And so when you're in the lower quadrants where the sun is not got one exalted position or dignified position, and actually goes through its hardest times, because in Libra that would be really hard if you lost your kidneys, like that, with the blood, because the blood rules the sun and the blood gets filtered through the kidneys, right? So then you go into the genitals. Well, you could find a way to have a catheter, you know what I mean, like, and then you don't need your legs because you could be in a wheelchair and stuff. So it gets really weird when you get to the lower quadrants and you get all the planets on there, because these are, to some people, non-essential things to be dealing with. That's why consciousness is so hard for some people, because they look at it as non-essential. Whereas if you look in really deep past ancient history and you see these alignments happening, they're happening in essential places, right? And that's when it affects people much more. So the Civil War with Neptune entering into Aries was an essential spiritual understanding of the right and wrongs of, and that's where identity does come in a good way of, like, yeah, like, slavery is not the way to go. And there becomes kind of a spiritual war at that point, which is not a good thing, but there also comes to a place to where we cannot suppress certain things with Neptune, and in Aries it gets the confidence to finally do those things that have been suppressed. About
that is
it.
mind-blowing, because, like, it's so, like, society does not prioritize, like, having a healthy sex life. Society does not prioritize having, like, a strong connection with spirituality, religion, or philosophy. Like, society does not prioritize, like, our connection to our community, or even sort of that greater form of servitude. So yeah.
Yeah, and that's the trigger in the spiritual community, is when they see people in that space, they go, God, I can't understand why you're not in that space. It's like, you have to see that we're in times where the planets that are non-essential to the human body, if you use the understanding of the body and humanity through the astrology system, is it's in these quadrants that really do also deal with the irony is outer planetary energy, right? So it's outside the norm of the reality. Because once, you know, even with Jupiter, like, and even with Mars, right? Because, and Pluto, Scorpio is Pluto, right? And then Pluto's banished as a planet, even though it's a planet, and even though they are obsessed with taking pictures of it in these last couple of years, right? There's that whole denying of what Pluto represents, which is truth and the depth and commitment, and even exposing of secrets and all that stuff. Like, oh no, like, let's, like, banish that planet because we don't want to all deal with that truth. Then you get Uranus with Aquarius, right? And you get, like, okay, people really like technology, but then they feel so separate from it, like, and then they're scared of it with AI and so forth. They love it, but then they're terrified of what comes next. And then when you get Neptune, it's like, okay, I want to do the spiritual thing, but I can also get lost, or I found my spirituality through drugs, or I found it through this, like, you know, like, it gets really, and some people don't go through all those things. And there are areas that are outside. There are areas that are outside of what people who are not in the conscious space of even understanding these concepts are not in the arena, right? They're not in the arena because they're not within Saturn's, you know, inside zone of the personal planets, and especially the personal planets that rule from here to there, because these are all the personal ones, right away. Just like, boom, Mars, you know, Venus, you know, Mercury, and then the moon, and then the sun. And that's how it works, you know? And then you get to Mercury again. And then you get to Venus again. And then you see how that works? It's crazy.
Yeah.
So
I just learned a lot.
I'm glad I taught you something.
I was about to say, all those individual concepts like are something that it feels like we've all arrived to before, but having them like connected like that as the non-essential area, that's like super interesting. And then, you know, the Capricorn part of it too, like it's almost like, of course society doesn't want to necessarily like make it prioritize that every person steps into their ultimate greatness. So like we have to kind of like find our own motivation for that. And on top of finding motivation, it can't just be that it like looks a certain way. We have to find the motivation to like be the person we really are to have it. So it's like,
yeah, because if you look at, when you were talking about jobs earlier, so Pluto in Cancer was during the Great Depression.
Yeah.
And Pluto's orbit around the sun is very weird, where it actually has a moment where it goes closer to the sun than it does on the other side from the sun. And we just went from the beginning of the 1900s to the 2000s, where it went through half the zodiac, but it's a 250-year cycle. So there's another whole half of the zodiac where now, like Sagittarius was Pluto for 12 years. Capricorn's Pluto for 16 years. And now you start expanding into where Pluto is leaving the closeness to the sun, and we went through the fastest transformational experience in this last century, right? It's like, and now slow. So people are freaked out about, oh gosh, global warming because of people, and we're going to quadruple. You watch, things are going to slow down. That's what all this Capricorn's coming in to do, is to be like, I'm putting a damn stop to this motherfucking shit now. You know what I mean? Like, this is getting stopped now. It's like the dam that comes in. Like, we are damming up the lake. Like, it's dammed. All the beavers are like, I'm on my job right now. You know, like, and it's just like, stop. It's like, you know, like when the toilet's fucking overflowing, like, turn the water off now. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want those Snickers bars, fucking, or whatever, those Baby Ruths from Caddyshack all over the bathroom.
Wasn't that a show, Three Angry Beavers?
Yeah, it was.
that's a good show.
So the toilet switch to turn off the valve, I think that's like incarnating souls. And so the valve is going to kind of get turned down, and Gaia is going to be like, okay, I'm not going to create so many of these anymore because the game's changing. And so we will see our population decline right when we expect it to explode the most.
In the numbers.
Yeah.
As far as 1 in 3 couples can't have a child.
That's how it's going to happen.
It's already happening, and they're trying to understand why. And then they're trying to use crazy techniques like, you know, let's tube them up, let's freeze an egg, let's, you know, throw another mother. But, you know, women today are like, I don't know if I want to carry this other person's baby as much, right? And then give it to them and go through that whole experience. There's not a lot of that. But if you watch a lot of these kind of like more sci-fi, because I'm into sci-fi, like, right, like becomes kind of this, like, let's find carriers for these babies.
Let's not.
Yeah, there was that. I feel like it was a Netflix movie.
Yeah,
I think it was called Mother.
Yeah, it was Mother,
right?
and
then I saw that.
And then and then she finds out that she's not the only one. There were so many of them. I mean, really, I think, though, to just kind of wrap this up with this whole time thing, and then the multi-dimensions, but then even going into the non-essential, it reminds me of in human design, the non-energy types. It's looked at as like whenever you get a non,
right,
there's a negative aspect to it. When there's not, if you're aware, it's just understanding the differences of it all. And actually, a non-energy type in astrology, like the legs or the knees or whatever, are actually where you can have some of the greatest power in your life. Like Capricorn is the knees. If you have strong knees, that's the whole idea. If you're weak in the knees, well, that means you have a weak Saturn energy. Like, my knees hurt. Like, I don't know if I can make it up this trek. And you have to look at, well, why are your knees? Like, you have to look at astrology. Where's your Saturn at? What signs it at? What aspects hit it that make you feel that way, that affect you and your knees to hurt, which is a manifestation of the problem with taking steps forward. Or if you constantly have your thighs hurting and you know, your butt hurts, because, you know, Sagittarius have butts. You can always tell a Sag by the way they walk in the butt and the legs. You know, there's something to say, like, what's going on with your belief systems? Because, you know, somebody with the radical great positive belief, you're going to see that horse riding towards the sunset or wherever that they're going. And then you're going to see Sages with smaller butts and smaller legs, the ones that are not in the belief of that space. I mean, I can blow people's minds all day with this shit, you know? But
That booty though.
Yeah. And there's something to say about when we go to, also when people break their ankles a lot with Aquarius. Like, you know, it's like not thinking innovatively enough, trying to go the same way all the time. And there's usually signs with people who break ankles, like, you should probably try to flex your life and move into a different direction, you know? Or with the feet, right? When people get like swollen feet, it usually comes from some really weird stuff that are going on with either alcoholism, right? Their feet get really big, or people who have like diseases and so forth. Like if your feet are starting to get really big and swell up, there's a problem going on that you're not aware of. It's hidden. But it also is might be something that subconsciously you're doing to yourself all the time, you know? And then there's something to say about swimming. You need your feet to swim. And people who can't swim, because I learned this one in the military and being a rescue swimmer, that like, I think over 70% of the American population does not swim, right? Like physically knows how to like do a lap. So you get a lot of people, and again, these numbers kind of sanely pop up in like the spiritual community, right? Like it's usually like the audience for me is 85% women and 15% men, right? So like the spiritual community is in general like 85% women, 15% men, and I've seen that between a lot of other people that I see. So men are very rare in the spiritual community, but then when you get to the population, it's very rare. 85% are not into it and 15% are. You know, you start getting to those things, but you get to the feet, and it's like you get that kind of same kind of number about people who know how to swim, and they're terrified, and there's subconscious issues to that fear of being drowned, of being like not able to free float with non-attachment to how the water is, and knowing that you can float and survive. Like I had to learn how to float and survive for 48 hours laying in the ocean in rescue swimming school with just food in my packs and no life vest. You just float with boots on. And I was like in swimming my whole life in water polo. So I just laid there and just was like, got a tan. I was able to take a nap, and I woke up like, oh, I'm all right.
Nice.
But you can do that though. But it's about non-float tanks, for example. That'll trip somebody the fuck out if they go in there and they haven't done the ability to know how to let their mind go. Because it'll just be that dark space and that no sound. The mind will start showing where all your patterns and all of your mind is running the show. And that was the first thing that happened to me in a float tank. I was like, oh, whoa, I'm running that and running that and running that and running that. And then I had to be in that moment and be like, I have to surrender to this pattern and that thought. I have to surrender to this pattern and that thought. I have to surrender to that one. And so there's something about floating. There's something about water, emotion. And the deepest emotion, of course, is Pisces, because it's ever depth. It's the one non-existent place. We know more about space than we do our ocean, which is, again, 75% of the earth. There's that kind of like I'd move it to the 75 percentile and the 25% in life, and everything that you'll see just kind of like of who's into it or not into it or yada yada.
What's in there?
And then if we want to end with some Scorpio with genitalia or nakedness, right? Like 75 to maybe 80% of people are comfortable or not comfortable with being naked. And then that other percent is like, cool, like whatever. So, you know, like there's that.
What percent of the world's population is Europe?
8.
Yeah, it's not traumatically big, believe it or not. But, you know, again, in Europe, that's a concept because they have beaches like that. But again, I would say that only 15 to 20% of those Europeans are actually going there to do that than the whole
it's unanimous
population.
All countries.
I mean, this is an assumption, so I'm not going to give out a... But that's what you start to see is you start to see those things. And I think that, you know, when we look at these, what we call non-essential things, it's like, actually, those are the things that if you can master and then if you could apply in your life, a solid intimacy aspect of vulnerability and connection. We were talking about this on Deep Astrology or Deep Love Tarot last night about self-intimacy. That's the exact words that you used, which I like, Dylan. And then moving that into our belief structures, our goals, and our ability to actually go on the trail for the goals. And then having the flexibility of Aquarius to be able to pivot and try something new. Because that's what, the ability, we don't have many parts that, move on weird axes. Everything else is pretty defined, right? Like we don't have a lot of points to move. Like, we're not very flexible people. But if you notice, it's the arm, it's the wrists, it's the ankles. These are what Aquarius rules, is the pivot points to get yourself in any direction. Damn. So when people are breaking those constantly, they're definitely having issues with Aquarian principles and innovation and trying something new. It's like, it's like, we say the old term, like, until your hand, once you burn your hand once, you're not going to burn it twice, But people with breaking their ankles and their wrists all the time are continually doing that and not trying a new way, like too rigid in my way or the highway fully, and not being willing to look at all their alternatives in life too, of direction and flow. And then, Pisces is, you'll see in people how people walk.
So I broke my mouth once, and I'm 11th house Taurus. I was probably hanging around with the wrong people.
Yeah, I mean, and it's funny because teeth are Capricorn. The bones are Capricorn, because it rules the whole structure of the body, the skeleton, right? But the teeth, so we call the planets that are outside of Saturn transcendental because of the teeth.
Oh.
Damn.
Right? Okay? So when you break your teeth or you're having a drilling on your teeth or anything, it's dealing with some Saturn growing up and having to take authority differently, because you have to be responsible for your teeth your whole life. Because without them, not only does your reputation get affected when you're missing teeth, but 2, you're unable to actually make it through the rest of your life without being able to eat and chew and
digest life.
It also directly affects the nervous system as well, that connects to the heart and all that. The teeth nervous system is pretty insane.
Wow.
Which that's like a Capricorn Sun, not like Sun and Capricorn, but a Capricorn Leo kind of situation once you get to that place, and the spine and how. But anyway, I can go on for hours. But that transcendental is because this is physically here, and the bones stay even after death. They stay after death. That's the only thing that stays after death, are the bones. So there's that part of Saturn in its true physical reality that sure, you might molt into a million things, and the bugs might eat your whole insides or whatever, but you'll still see where your sockets of your eyes were and your teeth were. It's pretty crazy.
I feel like I just got a whole new disc in my wheelhouse of like systemic knowledge.
Transcendental planets mean outside of Saturn's reign, and that means when you start to go into frequency realms that are beyond in the brain, that take you to other frequency models that are not of Saturn's control of the reality and outside physical space. That proves that there is frequencies outside of the physical space. But the other thing is that you got hit in the head, which is an Aries thing too. So it's like a dualistic thing. It's like an Aries, Capricorn, Taurus thing. It was like, sure, not hanging around the wrong people because you have Taurus in the 11th, Aries in the 10th, probably not
doing my real purpose.
Right. And then Capricorn, where your Saturn is, and in your chart, what's it? It's
oh no, everyone's.
Well, your 11th house, so Taurus, so that means that Scorpio would be your 5th house, so Sag would be your 6th. So, your Cancer rising, 7th house, yeah. So it was an imbalance of the kind of relationships. They weren't the right relationships, but there was a relationship in that group that got you into that group. And that was the point. That was the person you needed to break, not the group.
Well, I broke away from all of that.
I know, but you know, that's what's crazy is when you start to see, you can find like, oh, it was actually that person who got you into that group, and if you were to disconnect from that person, you probably will disconnect from that group, you know? So usually, sometimes it's like, well, I'm connected to these people still. Once you've like left, like if you have an ex, right, and like you connected to their friends and stuff, once that's broken, it's not like you just start going around unless you're a fucking weirdo, you know, and like going out and trying to hang out with all of them all the time, you know what I mean? Like, oh, I'm gonna go hang out with my ex's fucking brother, you know what I mean? Like, really? Like, you know? Yeah. So anyway, I think it was a great show. If you guys have any last little quick things that you want to say here, but
I'm still deep in thought about everything I just learned. I would say the number one thing I'm being drawn to is individuality right now is something that's going to be tested a lot. And it's going to be tested a lot in a lot of different ways. We sometimes expect that individuality is something that will be tested by other people, whether or not they accept it. But right now is the time to ask ourselves if we will be able to get comfortable with who we really are. Like, if we're going to be able to look at ourselves 10 years ago, look at ourselves 10 years from now, and sort of see our future self and the things that they've applied, the things that they've done, the kind of energy that they radiate, are we applying our true individuality right here and now? Like, are we being a part of that? Are we being a part of this moment in that? Or do we think that we need to improve so that we can finally be ourselves? Because we can be ourselves right now. We can be ourselves right now as imperfect as we are. And that's, ourselves is imperfect. But we don't have to wait for something. We can apply the best parts of who we were, the best parts of who we can be, and we can start to do that right here and now. I think that's the kind of, just feels like a Uranus message that's coming through.
I think we're moving into a scheme that's not really as much about concrete choices that you think you're making or not making, but rather who you're showing up as in every moment, vibrationally, verbally, mentally, emotionally. Who are you showing up as, and what fork in the road is that going to take you down as you show up as that every moment? As all the atoms in your body disappear and reappear in this quantum universe, how are you modulating that? Where are you looking? Where are you coming from? That's actually taking you where you're going, not what you think you're manifesting. That's all. It's been a great show. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, it's been a great show. And I think that both of those are very Uranian, and I was going to go to Uranian too, more from a people's perspective of that. Yeah, like, really, maybe this is about what you think is the right way or wrong way. You got to kind of flip this and look at this from a new angle right now about life.
No
like,
way.
Especially because beliefs are so intense right now. So if you believe, like, well, this is wrong to do, it's like, well, maybe take that for a second and redirect the perspective of this in a new value system, in a new way. Let go of the old way that your values are and go, actually, I don't want to do this because I think this is bad, but actually if I did do this, would it be better than what my idea of what bad is? You know, like, there's that whole concept of, like, right now there are doors that look bad maybe because of more of a belief sense of idea or something, when they could be redirected and looked at and be like, actually, that actually goes a lot farther than the idea of why it's bad, which is usually attached to something of that you're hoarding emotionally, of some weird thing that actually is you holding yourself back to a better position from it. So I think that there's a lot about ascension right now in beliefs and ascension in perspective about what is great and what doors are great. And instead of showing up as, well, the things that, and I love Dylan's perspective at this last point right here about how you show up is how it will be. Like, really think about how you show up right now energetically and hold that space and stay there and know that those connections are going to eventually see that. Everybody's going to, like, I feel this week, quantumly turn their satellites into a stronger signal that makes sense based upon holding that space.
Your unified field.
Mm-hmm.
That's what'll get you there.
Yeah. And you have to trust that the other uniform or unified fields are coming together too at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
Because when you move a satellite, right, it's like searching, but you hold it and you wait for a second because it's a long signal that it's going to hold. It's not going to stop until it hits that satellite, and it's like, yes, okay, there it is. Like, that was where I had adjusted. The satellite adjusted that way. I adjusted my satellite that way, and kabam! There's something about I feel satellites. Triangulation, yeah, moving moving position into a new place, and so right now, where you're not triangulated at, you're like, oh, I don't see that, because a lot of people today, my new moon horoscope is like, well, nothing happened to me. I'm like, well, this is Sag. It's not about what happens to you. It's about what you go towards and what you envision and what you believe, and also what you're gonna believe will happen and what is seated in that way, and then what that adventure is, whether you're gonna go or not. You know, like, it's not about what just happens to you.
What possibilities are you dwelling in, even when nothing seems to be happening?
Yeah, if you're dwelling on nothing, the universe will competitively make sure to give you nothing. Like, you know,
yeah, and so I'll use this last Jupiter analogy here. Like, everybody thinks Jupiter's just good luck. Like, it's something supposed to happen to me, right? Like I'm supposed to have, like, the lotto come win, or I'm supposed to have my lover just shows up on a knight in shining armor. But it's like, so Jupiter just trying my ascendant, which is a very good aspect, and my Mercury, and I was all excited, of course. And, of course, nothing different through the day. I even had some quarrels in my just own self that day. But it was funny, the audition I went on yesterday was actually the day that the email and people were talking about me about this gig that I possibly might get during that transit that I didn't realize were happening.
The things you can't see.
And it takes a little bit of time. And then it was also about Jupiter. It's like, were you living in that higher realm of belief and truth the whole time? And especially since where Jupiter was, not only the last time, or when it hit in the trine to that rising, right? When Jupiter crossed the rising, and the ideas and the mindset and the beliefs that you had set, it will, and that's where you have to hold beliefs. They have to be flexible still, right? But there's a sense of, again, this comes away why I loved your last bit here about, like, holding the space of who you're showing up as, so you triangulate in the right direction, because life will triangulate for you by holding that space. You're the satellite that it's triangulating to. You're not the satellite triangulating as much, I feel, to a space in the universe. Like, I feel that's the difference between the Ptolemy point of view and the Copernicus point of view of the universe, which I believe that, of course, we're in a round system. I do believe, just from understanding Cassini points and watching, you know, when Venus goes around the sun and stuff. I'm not a flat earther, but I can say that because I do believe we rotate. But I can say that I object to the Copernican point of view that the sun is the center of the universe as much, where I feel that on Earth, as Ptolemy's view was, which flat earthers believe, because everything's happening right here. So if everybody in science is looking for other worlds and other realms and other places of life, when, gosh, there's an abundance here that hasn't even been understood yet. And that's the Ptolemy point of view, that the Earth is the center of the universe of what is going on, because that's what you're experiencing in this moment, you know? So, bridging both. We were talking about bridging.
Triangulating.
Yeah. Good show. Make sure, if you guys need readings or anything for both these guys, especially right now during these times, will blow your mind. So, find Jax Atlantis. He's at Jax Atlantis and at The Spirit Advisor on Instagram, both of them. And hit them up. You can find them right there or at their websites. So you just type in on Google Jax Atlantis or The Spirit Advisor, Dylan. You can find them both on my stuff. I have always them tagged in all the posts on YouTube under all these videos where you see them. They're amazing. If you want readings from them, definitely get them.
And Sarah and I are still doing our combo reading.
Oh, that's right.
We still have some slots left, so that's pretty.
Yeah, and then Jax and I are coming up with we're going to come up with a combo tarot astrology thing. It's not so much of a reading. It's going to be much more of a, I don't know.
It's vague and unformed, but let's just say it involves the next 10 years and it's going to be insane.
We've got a pretty interesting concept coming here.
Yeah.
Which we were waiting for Mercury to come out retrograde and stuff.
Yeah.
But there's a lot. There's a lot going on here at High Vibe. Thank you so much for being a part of it. And make sure that you join us on our apps. We just got the updates and the notifications working. We've been sending those notifications out today. They've been working. And I'm going to talk with Dylan and I'll talk with Jax. And you guys will start to see notifications out randomly from them, especially like if they feel
all
something's
day, all
coming
night.
out that they need to say. Make sure that you download the apps because you'll get the message straight to you out of nowhere. You can't get that on social media, you know? Like, you won't get someone's post right away, but you can through High Vibe with being part of getting those notifications. So thanks so much for all your support. Thank you for being part of another After Dark, the spiritual talk show on highvibe.tv. And make sure that you subscribe and check out my Jupiter and Capricorn videos. They're out now. They're going to be all about the next year of Jupiter and Capricorn for your individual sun sign. You can buy a bundle of all 12 zodiac signs if you want for a cheaper price, if you have that person that you're thinking about or your loved ones that you want to look after. Thanks so much, and we'll see you on the next After Dark.